EC Comics are great. They're great. Bernie Wrightson did a lot of the art. Great stuff. But anyway, from a writer's point of view,
meaning your point of view.
my point of view, the thing that I think they did very well in this, I'd love to talk about a great choice at the end, but I cannot. So the thing that I thought they did really well in this is there are things called traits and tags that writers can do. And you can do this in prose and you can do it in a visual medium. And there's obviously a visual medium. So that they are things that you add to a character. So the audience, the viewer, the reader doesn't have to do a lot of work to remember who that character is every time they step on screen or step on stage, as you would say in prose. For example, we have Komeda has a ponytail. And so we see that ponytail and we know it's him. Koshigaya has a little mustache, a little mustache. So whenever we see the mustache, we know it's him. If you're doing this in writing, some of the famous ones are, if you've ever read Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time, Nynaeve, I don't know if that's how you pronounce that, but that's how I pronounce it, always is yanking on her braid. So it can be an action like that. It can be something that they hold, like Indiana Jones, who we talked about earlier, has his hat and a whip, which also lends to his silhouette. We can just see Indiana Jones' silhouette and we know it's him. We know who that character is. We don't have to do a lot of work. It can be a symbol. So, for example, we see the bat symbol and we know Batman's here. We know there's a Batman joint. If it's Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash, these are all much more iconic. Green Lantern. So what you're doing is, and I talk about this a lot, the audience is lazy, and I don't mean this derogatory in any way. The audience doesn't want to do work, and they shouldn't have to do work. That's a ghost. 100% a ghost behind me. The audience doesn't want to have to do work, so you can do little things to make it easier for them. Have a thug with red spiky hair, so every time he shows up on screen, we know, hey, that's the same thug I saw earlier. We've watched a couple animes where I've had some trouble knowing, is that the character we saw earlier? Is it not? Or even what faction they belong to. It's very easy to just give them a different colored uniform than the other character, some bright color, which is also used in comic books a lot. And that's the way humans kind of catalog things. It gives us something visual. It can also be auditory, do, or every time, or a way a character speaks in prose that they say, this character says bloody every other word. We'll get to your uncle's bloody wedding. At first, the reader might go, wait, who is that character? And then they say something or do something or are described in a certain way or have a certain object. And we go, oh, yeah, that guy, the guy with that gun that says Susie on the handle. We know who that character is. We remember them and we don't have to do as much work. And that's one of the things that I was never confused at who the bad guys were, who the good guys were, who was coming for who, which character was which, except for the female characters all kind of, they didn't do this as well with the female characters in terms of they were all kind of similar build with long black hair.
But a couple of things about that. So one, it's interesting you were talking about the tags because on my diss track, those things stood out to me as well. And I have that the characters were kind of relegated to those tags. Like the one guy has a mustache, the other guy has a ponytail, the one thug who I'll talk about later is my favorite character in this whole thing had spiky red hair. But now that you've talked about it, it's kind of changed my mind because it's something that, helped them stay in my memory as I watched it versus it being their entire personality in the show.
But you can reel it off like that. That's the thing. Like you can say, oh, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy.
Right. So it did help in that way. So I think that's a really good thing to cover there. And the next thing is just kind of a question. So I feel like it could get a little bit long in the tooth to kind of open with that, especially if it's written down, like just to open with that constantly. So like how often does that need to come up?
Yeah, it just depends on how often the character appears. If you're writing an Indiana Jones story, we don't need to say his hat and whip every time we see him, because we kind of get the picture of who Indiana Jones is. But if it's a character that only comes up once early and then maybe 3 or 4 chapters later, we just want to drop it in, if we can drop in a trait or tag. Or
I like the ones that are more personality traits, like you mentioned, saying bloody every sentence or whatever. There's an anime I would love to get to called the English translation anyway is called Full Dive. This Full Dive MMO RPG is shittier than real life. Like legitimately, that's the title. And just the title of that anime, I'm like, I'm in. I don't even care if it's the worst anime ever.
yeah,
And it's not the worst anime ever. We'll get to it. But the reason I bring this up is because there were a few episodes I had to watch subtitled. As we talk about often, I prefer the dub. Merv, sounds like you prefer the dub too.
well, because most of the time you're looking at sweet art.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like focus down and have to read when I'm trying to watch sweet art.
To me, the direct way to say it is if I want to read a book, I'll read a book. If I want to watch a show, I'm watching a show, right? Anyway, I had to watch a few episodes in the subtitled version because the dub hadn't caught up to the story yet where I was, and I enjoyed it so much. I'm like, I gotta keep watching this story. But anyway, long story long, there's a character in that show, and she's like a torturer character.
Okay, like a dominatrix or something.
Yeah, very similar. She's got this laugh that's like chee hee hee. Like chi chi chi, kind of like chi chi chi. I guess it sounds like chi chi chi. Anyway, it's very, very memorable. And just as you're talking, for some crazy reason, as you're talking about tags the second time, her laugh just kept popping into my head because every time she came on, within the first sentence or two, she's throwing out this like chi 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 laugh. And it did make me feel a little bit of FOMO on the subtitle thing because the dub, the actress who does the dub does not have that tag.
Yeah, it's a very good tool for writers.